Hello all. So we will continue for our section 1.4 complex numbers. So first let's go over the definition. What means complex numbers? As we learned before, it's always involved with I, yeah? So the I is called the imaginary unit. I is also defined as I equal to square root of -1. And when we talk about y equal to square root of x in section 1.1, we discussed about this before. So square root of -1, when you use your calculator, is not defined. It will give you an error. So this is why we define this as imaginary number, where the I square, which will be what? -1. And then you can square both sides. Yeah. So I equal to square root of -1, you square both sides. So I square, so the square will cancel the square root, so you have -1. This is where it comes from. Okay, so the definition for the complex number is the set of all numbers in the form of a plus what? bi, where a, b are any real numbers. And a is called the real part, and the b, which is the coefficient of the imaginary unit I, will be called the imaginary part. The operations of the complex numbers means addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Yeah. So if you wanted to add the two complex numbers, you just treat I as x. Combine like term. You combine the number together and combine the terms with i's together. So a plus c, a minus c, b minus d. But for the multiplication, what do we need to do? We need to what? FOIL. What means FOIL? Means first a times c outside plus a times di inside bi times c last bi times what? Di. So then we will see what we have. A times c plus a di, and we wanted I as x, yeah, plus bci. What will be the last part? Is b times d is bd. What is I times I? This is where you have the common error, okay? It will be I square, not I anymore, okay? And what is I square again? I square equal to what? -1. Yeah, so I square equal to -1 when we learned before. So what do we have? AC plus AD plus BCI. Yeah, so you both have I. What is here? I square become what? -1. Yeah, so what do we have here? It will be what? Minus BD, because -1 times BD is what? Negative BD. So what do we have? AC minus BD plus AD plus BCI. Okay, so this is the multiplication. Be careful when you have I times I, it's not I anymore, it's I square. And I square is equal to what? -1. Keep this in mind. Okay, so then we wanted to practice with a special one. Is a plus bi times a minus bi. Actually, later on we will give the definition. These are called what? Conjugate of each other. Okay, and so what will we do? You FOIL a times a negative bi, bi a minus bi minus bi. So what do we have? It's a square minus abi plus abi minus b square times I square equal to -1. So you have a square what? Plus b square. So what happens here? A complex number times its conjugate will give you a real number. Okay, you do not have the imaginary part anymore. So if you want to get rid of I, what should you do? Multiply its what? Conjugate. pretty important. Multiply conjugate will get rid of the I, okay? Okay, so then let's practice. What do you do when you add? You combine like term. 5 plus 7 is what? Minus 12. Minus 11 plus 4 is what? Minus 7i. So this is where it comes from. 5 plus negative 11 plus 4i. With me? And then you get this. Similarly, what do you have here? Negative 5 plus I minus is what? Plus 11 minus plus 6i. So then negative 5 plus 11, what do you get? 6 plus what? 7i. Okay, and then similarly we will do what? This is one term times two term, distribute. 4i times 3 minus 4i times 5i. 4i times 3 is what? 12i minus what? 20 times what? I squared. What is I squared again? Negative 1. So it's 12i plus 20 because this is negative 1. And similarly, what do we need to do here is what? FOIL, yeah? It's 5 times 6 plus 5 times negative 7i plus 4i times 6 plus 4i times negative 7i. You can do it slowly, and then you can even pause the video and then you do it by yourself and then compare your answers. Okay, 30 minus 35i plus 24i minus 28i squared. I squared become negative 1, so it's 58 minus 11i. Okay, and this one, 2 plus 3 is 2 times 2 plus 3i minus. Okay, so I will directly write down the answers. 2 times 2 is 4 minus 6i plus 6i minus 9i squared is plus 9 is 13. Okay, so the conjugate. So what means the conjugate? A plus bi and become a minus bi. What happens here? We only change the sign of the imaginary part. Do we touch the real part? No. Okay, be careful. So 3 plus 2i, what will be the conjugate? 3 minus 2i, because here is plus, here is minus. Negative 2i, what will we do? Do we have real parts? No. So then it will become positive i. What will be the conjugate of negative 1? This is a tricky one. Do we have an imaginary part? No. Then we do not change it because the real part we do not change. Okay, so the division of complex numbers is a little bit trickier. Okay, so what do we have here is 7 plus 4i over 2 minus 5i. We want you to write the answers in the a plus bi form. What does this mean? We wanted what? Get rid of I on the denominator. Yeah. How could we get rid of the I on the denominator? Does anybody remember? If we wanted to get rid of I, what should we do? Multiply the conjugate. Okay, multiply the conjugate. What is the conjugate here? 2 minus 5i is what? 2 plus 5i, yeah? What should we do on the top? Should we multiply 7 minus 4i? No. So once you multiply 2 plus 5i on the bottom, then you do the same thing on the top. Are you with me? Because on the numerator, you can have I. You just do not want any I on the denominator. Okay, very important. So what will we get? Yeah, so you FOIL, what will you have? 14 plus 8i plus 35i plus 20i squared, 4 minus 10i plus 10i minus 25i squared. Okay, I squared is what? Negative 1. So 14 minus 20, negative 6, plus 8 is 43i. So this cancel, plus 25 is what? 29. So in the form, it will be what? Negative 6 over 29 plus 43 over 29i. Okay, so what will be this one? Square root of negative 4. Square root of negative 1 is I. What will be square root of negative 4? We can think about as square root of negative 1 times 4. So what do we have? Square root of negative 1 times square root of 4. What is square root of 4? 2. What is square root of negative 1? I. With me? So what do we have? What should you do with the negative sign outside? Nothing. Keep it. Square negative sign become what? Inside of the square root. Negative sign become the I. And then square root of 6. You with me? Okay, so let's practice one more. Square root of negative 9. What it will be? The negative sign become what? I. The square root of 9 is what? 3. Get it? Good. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to see. I to the power 1 is what? I. What is I squared? We know the definition, negative 1. What will be I cube? Okay, I cube is I times I times I. 2i times together is what? Negative 1 times another I is what? Negative I. Okay, so what will be I to the fourth? I times I times I times I. This is what? Negative 1. Negative 1. So I to the fourth is what? 1. So once you have this, what do you think will be I to the fifth? It's I fourth times another I, yeah? So I to the 6, negative 1, I to the 7, negative I to the 8th is 1. So this is like a cycle. Are you with me? So every 4 times I to the power, it will goes to what? 1. So similarly, if I give you I to the 33, so what will be 33? How many 4s do you have as 33? 33, 4 times 8 is what? 32 plus 1, yeah? Are you with me? So if it's a multiple of 4, I to the 4 is 1, I to the 8 is 1. And similarly, what do we guess? I to the 12 is also 1. So if it's a multiple of 4, it's always what? 1. So what happens here? 8 multiple of 4, this will be I to the what? 4 times 8 times I, yeah? Addition means what? Multiplication here. This will be equal to what? 1. So what do you have? It's I. Okay, so this is a very important technique. Okay? Okay, that's for complex numbers.